Yeah, how do you put someone in jail and you don't even name the clients? That sounds kind of insane. There was a lot of people that met with him and did business with him and traveled with him after he was arrested.
Names, last names, area codes, okay.
Who created this book?
Epstein himself.
We're so grateful to be joined by Jeffrey Epstein survivor, Annie Farmer. Annie, thank you so much for taking the time to come back on the show.
I would like to answer your question, but on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer this question and any related questions.
Long before the Epstein files were ever released, billionaires, politicians, tech elites, and celebrities were moving in Jeffrey Epstein's powerful social circle. But according to recent reports, podcast host Joe Rogan says he refused an introduction to Epstein back in 2017, after quickly researching his criminal past and sensing something wasn't right. Now, as new documents continue to surface, questions are being asked about who knew what and when. From Epstein's controversial contact book to debates about what may still be hidden or redacted, Rogan has openly criticized a lack of transparency surrounding the investigation and the handling of evidence by authorities. While appearing in Epstein-related documents does not imply wrongdoing, the scale of his network, involving wealthy and influential figures, continues to fuel public curiosity, controversy, and calls for full disclosure. This is the story behind the connections, the refusals, and the unanswered questions still surrounding Jeffrey Epstein.
People have an understanding of how things are really working than ever before.
Yeah.
Like this Epstein file thing, right? That was a big eye-opener for a lot of people. When you see how many people after 2008, after he was arrested, after he went to jail, were actively taking money from him. MIT took money from him and tried to hide it and said to make sure that any donations from Jeffrey are listed as anonymous. So
Wow.
you find out like people are like, they referred to him as Voldemort, like you couldn't say his name.
Wow.
There was a lot of people that met with him and did business with him and traveled with him after he was arrested, after he went to jail.
Do you spend a lot of time reading them?
No, I try not to. I try to have experts come on. I try to read. You can't change it.
Yeah.
And it'll with your head.
Yeah, it's
like
toxic.
You will really get.
It'll stick with and I know I've tried not to.
Yeah.
In a recent episode of his podcast, Joe Rogan revealed that back in 2017, theoretical physicist Lawrence Krauss attempted to arrange a meeting between Rogan and Jeffrey Epstein. According to emails that have circulated publicly, Epstein reportedly asked Krauss for an introduction after noticing Krauss had appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience. In one message, Epstein allegedly wrote that he thought Rogan was funny and was interested in meeting him. Krauss did reach out, but Rogan declined the invitation. Epstein later followed up with another message suggesting a possible dinner, even mentioning filmmaker Woody Allen as a potential attendee. At the time, Epstein had already been convicted on sexual-related charges in 2008, yet he still maintained contact with influential figures across politics, business, science, and entertainment. Over the years, his social network reportedly included high-profile names such as Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Prince Andrew, and Jay-Z, though appearing in contact records does not imply wrongdoing. Rogan has since said he felt uncomfortable with the idea of meeting Epstein and chose to keep his distance. The situation has fueled ongoing public interest about who associated with Epstein and what people may have known at the time.
I'm in the files for not going.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm in the files for not going because Jeffrey Epstein was trying to meet with me.
Oh, I did see that.
Yeah, and I was like, what?
I'm like, no thanks.
Yeah.
Aren't you glad?
Yeah, but I would have never went anyway. It's like, it's not even a possibility that I would ever went.
But
especially after I Googled him. I was like, what the are you talking about? This was like 2017. One of my guests was trying to get me to meet him. I was like, you high? Like, what the are you talking about?
For what reason would you? What would be...
If I was a guy who was like sucking up to the rich and powerful, if I was really interested in hanging out with rich and powerful people.
You know, it's crazy. That's so crazy. But yeah, some people
get intoxicated by being in a circle of rich and powerful people, even if they're not like they don't even have any ambitions of being one of those people. They just want to be around them. They want to be around Nobel Prize winners, and because this guy what he was doing was very clever in that he was getting all of these very powerful and very respected people together. Yeah. And you would figure like, oh, it's
if that guy's there, if that lady's
Clinton's
there.
here. This is fine. Clinton's here. How could this be bad?
Yeah.
Look, it's Steven Pinker. How could this be bad?
Yeah.
You know, he's a genius. Like, and so you would go, I would imagine, you would go to these, because like there's people that went to these, like he had parties in New York, like he brought in celebrities and comedians. Didn't Louis Black get invited to one of those? I think he's talked about it. I know Chelsea Handler went to one of them. It's like he would bring all these people in, and he'd like to be around famous people and entertainers and a lot of intellectuals and professors. And Noam Chomsky was famously deeply involved.
Rogan has also said that years before the major headlines, controversial media personality Alex Jones had repeatedly warned him about Jeffrey Epstein. According to Rogan, Jones claimed something disturbing were happening around Epstein's private island, suggesting it wasn't simply a destination for wealthy elites, but a place surrounded by secrecy and serious allegations. Jones has long alleged that powerful individuals could potentially be placed in compromising situations, though many of these claims remain unverified and widely disputed. What is known, however, is that Epstein had already pleaded guilty in 2008 to charges related to solicitation of a minor, yet he continued to maintain connections with influential figures in business, science, and politics. For example, Bill Gates later acknowledged meeting Epstein several times after his conviction, saying he regretted those interactions. As public scrutiny increased, questions grew about why Epstein was still able to move within elite circles despite his criminal record. Rogan has said that hearing early warnings made him cautious, ultimately choosing not to pursue any introduction.
It seems very dark. Because it seems like it was this bizarre blackmail influence thing that was going on for a long time.
So long
time.
Through different administrations. That's what's so unbelievable about it.
It's
how
dark.
long it was going on.
This is where the story takes an even darker turn, because many people still wonder how Jeffrey Epstein gained access to some of the most powerful circles in the world. Over the years, Epstein was photographed and associated with influential figures, including former US President Bill Clinton, members of the British royal family such as Prince Andrew, and prominent leaders in business, finance, and academia. Being connected to such high-profile networks is extremely rare, which has fueled ongoing speculation about how Epstein built and maintained these relationships. Some commentators, including Joe Rogan, have discussed theories about whether Epstein may have had backing or protection from powerful institutions. Rogan has said it seems unusual that Epstein was able to fund a lifestyle that included private jets, luxury properties, and even a private island, while maintaining connections to the highest levels of influence. However, no conclusive public evidence has proven that Epstein was working for any government agency, and many claims about blackmail operations remain allegations or theories rather than confirmed facts. What remains undisputed is that Epstein's wealth, connections, and ability to move within elite circles, even after prior criminal charges, continue to raise questions that investigators, journalists, and the public are still trying to fully understand.
Let me just get real and say,
if I gun to your head, what do you think your best assessment of what Epstein, who was Epstein, who was he working for?
Well, I don't know, right? So I'm just guessing. Everybody wants to say he was working for the Mossad. He very well could have been. He could have been working for the CIA. He could have been a guy who was on his own, but also working with them, right? Like a guy that they used, but they never fully endorsed.
Like an asset?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a guy who could move money around.
Right.
He definitely...
Good at laundering money.
The moving money around stuff was very weird because he had money through no way that anybody could ever explain.
Yeah.
He had an enormous amount of money through no way that nobody could ever explain. Which, you know, if you're state funded, you're funded by Israel and Israel's funded by America, and, you know, there's also NGOs and nonprofits, and there's ways to move money around where you can give this guy money.
Yeah.
So he was like Weinstein, who is an economist, right? Weinstein's a legitimate mathematician.
Eric?
Yeah. So when Eric met him, his first inclination was he was a fraud.
He's a construct.
Yeah, a construct. And did he tell you the whole story about the girl sitting on his lap?
Yep.
So Epstein, while he's meeting with Eric Weinstein for the first time, has a beautiful girl sitting on his lap, and a woman. I shouldn't say girl. He said she was like in her 20s, and she's sitting on his lap, and he's bouncing around, so they're juggling around while
he's asking math questions.
Yeah, talking serious. So he was obviously nerd fishing. He was fishing for nerds, and I think he caught a lot of nerds in that net. There's a lot of those 100%. Guys that wound up going to that island. They probably thought, this is great. We get to party.
Investigators and journalists have long discussed what became known as Epstein's Little Black Book, a collection of names, phone numbers, and contact connected to Jeffrey Epstein's social network. It's important to understand that being listed in the contact book does not imply wrongdoing. Many entries were simply acquaintances, business contacts, or social connections. However, the sheer number of influential figures linked to Epstein's network helped fuel public interest and concern about the scope of his relationships. In 2009, authorities became aware that Epstein's former Palm Beach house manager, Alfredo Rodriguez, had attempted to sell a copy of Epstein's contact book. Rodriguez was later charged and served time for attempting to profit from materials connected to the investigation. Another central figure in the case is Ghislaine Maxwell, who was later convicted in 2021 on federal charges related to trafficking minors for Epstein. During investigations and court proceedings, references were made to records and contact lists connected to Epstein's operations, though not all alleged materials described in media reports have been publicly confirmed or released.
Last name, area codes, okay?
Who created this book?
Epstein himself.
This book was made by Epstein?
This is a video of an FBI sting operation with Jeffrey Epstein's former house manager and an undercover FBI employee from 2009. The Palm Beach house manager, Alfredo Rodriguez, believes he is selling Epstein's address book to someone representing a lawyer of Epstein's victims.
You will see a lot of important people here.
He claims that the book contains contacts of powerful people, as well as Epstein's victims.
So those are mostly underage girls, the numbers?
They were very young.
A source familiar with the case confirmed the video shows the sting operation, which court documents show happened 2 years after the FBI demanded that Rodriguez turn over any Epstein documents. Instead, court documents say he kept the address book and tried to sell it for $50,000.
Alfredo, how are you? How you doing, buddy?
In the occasionally redacted 45-minute video of the meeting, Rodriguez implicates Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's close associate, who's now serving a 20-year sentence for of minors.
Ghislaine Maxwell was his former companion, a very powerful lady from England. She would go to the former Eastern countries in Europe and find girls for Epstein. And I knew that because I went with my wife.
Rodriguez also claims that Maxwell kept a computer database of girls, something he said he saw briefly once.
What kind of pictures?
Naked girls from Sweden, from Romania, from Czechoslovakia, from Brazil, from Colombia.
All minors? All young girls?
Very young, very young.
Like when you say very young, how young are we talking?
16, 17. The teenagers, they have braces mostly.
Rodriguez provided no evidence to support the existence of the database.
Good, count it. And while you're
The video, released as part of the recent trove of Epstein documents, abruptly ends after the agent hands Rodriguez a bag of cash and says he will call the lawyer.
It also wasn't just Epstein's private island that became the focus of investigations. His private aircraft, often referred to in media reports as a Lolita Express, was repeatedly mentioned in legal testimonies connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Flight logs from Epstein jets became a major point of public interest because they recorded numerous trips involving associates, employees, and other passengers over many years. Again, appearing on a flight log does not imply wrongdoing, but the records helped investigators map out the scale of Epstein's travel network. Several victims later testified in court that Epstein often traveled with young women or recruits, and prosecutors argued that some of these trips were part of a wider pattern of exploitation. Court proceedings ultimately led to the 2021 conviction of Ghislaine Maxwell for her role in recruiting and grooming minors.
It took a lot of people involved. It took doctors, psychiatrists, gynecologists, dentists, all these people knew what was going on. Hairstylists. I mean, the list goes on. I could keep going on and on and on. Drivers, chauffeurs, butlers, housemaids. It took all of these people turning a blind eye, which they weren't blind to because we were right there blatantly in front of them. They knew exactly what was going on. Everyone's turned a blind eye in the place where I was supposed to be protected, in my country where I was supposed to be protected. The justice system failed us then. I believe they're going to do something amazing for us now. I really believe in them. I believe that the New York Southern District wants to do the right thing. And I will do everything that I can do to be a part of helping them do that.
Details about Epstein's private jet continue to attract attention as investigators and journalists examine travel records connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Flight logs that became public through court filings and media reporting showed that Epstein frequently transported guests across the United States and internationally. These records have been widely discussed because they help illustrate the scope of Epstein connections and movements over many years. Among the individuals reported to have appeared in certain flight records is former U.S. President Donald Trump. Some archived logs from the 1990s indicate that Trump was listed on flights associated with Epstein's aircraft. However, appearing in a flight log does not imply wrongdoing, and no charges related to Epstein's crimes were brought against Trump. Public records and statements indicate that Trump later distanced himself from Epstein and reportedly banned him from Mar-a-Lago years before Epstein's 2019 arrest. As with many names appearing in contact books or travel logs, inclusion reflects association at a point in time, not proof of criminal activity. The broader controversy surrounding Epstein's flight record continues to generate public interest because they provide insight into the network of high-profile individuals who cross paths with him, raising ongoing questions about how Epstein maintained access to influential circles for so long.
Epstein's wealth was so vast, the fact that he had this fleet of planes. We've heard a lot about the Lolita Express. What happened on the Lolita Express?
Everything that happened on the Lolita Express and his other planes was the same thing that happened in his bedrooms and the massage rooms, on the beach, wherever we were. They did not stop because we're in the air. 95% of the time, there was always involved. Jeffrey couldn't take a 2-hour flight without having to ejaculate. That's how sick this man was.
How did you live every day? How did you get on board that plane? How did you live knowing you're going off to New York or to the island or to wherever you were about to be trafficked to? You must have been a ball of dread and anxiety.
I was horrified. I was sad. I was angry. I was disgusted. I was a shell, and the only way that I could cope with what I was going through was, taking Xanax. And Xanax is like an anti-anxiety tablet, but it also, it took away that feeling of anger, sadness. It made me feel numb. It was a numbing.
Public attention surrounding the Epstein case intensified after previously sealed court record began to be unsealed in phases, revealing additional names of individuals who had some level of connection or mention within legal documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. It's important to note that many of these names appeared in testimony, contact records, or legal discussions, and inclusion in these documents does not imply criminal wrongdoing. Courts often redact information in sensitive cases to protect victims' identities, ongoing investigations, or privacy rights of individuals who were not charged with crimes. However, the redactions themselves have sparked public debate. Some commentators and social media users have questioned whether authorities have been fully transparent about the extent of Epstein's network, while others emphasize that legal standards require careful handling of sensitive information to avoid harming victims or compromising due process.
Congressman Massey and I went to the Department of Justice to read the unredacted Epstein files. We spent about 2 hours there, and we learned that 70 to 80% of the files are still redacted. In fact, there were 6 wealthy, powerful men that the DOJ hid for no apparent reason. When Congressman Massey and I pointed this out to the Department of Justice, they acknowledged their mistake, and now they have revealed the identity of these 6 powerful men. These men are Salvatore Navora, Zorab Mikoladze, Leopig Leonor, Nicola Caputa, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, CEO of Dubai Ports World, and billionaire businessman Leslie Wexner, who was labeled as a co-conspirator by the FBI. Now, my question is, why did it take Thomas Massey and me going to the Justice Department to get these 6 men's identities to become public? And if we found 6 men that they were hiding in 2 hours, imagine how many men they are covering up for in those 3 million files.
Joe Rogan has also discussed the Epstein case on his podcast, questioning why, despite years of investigations, relatively few individuals connected to Jeffrey Epstein have faced criminal charges. Rogan has argued that the scale of evidence collected over the years suggests authorities likely reviewed large volumes of documents, testimonies, and digital materials. However, legal experts often point out that being mentioned in records, contact lists, or flight logs does not automatically meet the legal standard required for prosecution. Criminal cases require direct evidence of wrongdoing that can be proven in court beyond reasonable doubt. Authorities, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation, have conducted extensive investigations into Epstein's activities over nearly 2 decades. Court proceedings ultimately resulted in the 2021 conviction of Ghislaine Maxwell for her role in trafficking minors connected to Epstein.